So good afternoon, everyone. My name's Simon Hurst. I work for a company called Xoomworks. I'm a consultant there. I'm here with Hazel Brench from Bourne Leisure. So we're going to talk today about a project that we undertook together to implement Coupa P2P software. But we're not really going to talk about the software or sort of the processes that were implemented, but more we're going to look at what we felt made the program a success, which was focusing on the people that it affected, so change management, the suppliers, and how we got them on board and so on. So the format will be basically I'm going to be asking some questions and Hazel's going to be giving her experiences of the program. Before we get started, just a very quick overview of Xoomworks. So we're a procurement consultancy based here in London. We have offices across Europe and more recently in South Africa. We're procurement specialists all the way through the process, from sourcing through managing risk, managing your suppliers, through to the more procure to pay and invoicing side of things. We've been going for around about 15 years, starting off with 5 people, and now we're around about 130 people. We're partners with Coupa Software, who are the leading provider of procure to pay cloud software. And we were the implementation partner with Bourne Leisure when they implemented Coupa. So that's the kind of context for the presentation. So enough about us and me. Hazel, if you can just give us a quick intro about yourself, Bourne Leisure, and what the programme was all about.
Thanks, Simon. So I work for Bourne Leisure. I look after the Coupa system. I was involved in the project from the outset, so looked after things like user training, move to production, catalogue enablement, supplier enablement, sort of you name it, we sort of undertook it all. I now look after the system itself, the help desk team that looks after the users, new user adoption, training, and any upgrades or system development that we undertake at Bourne Leisure. Bourne Leisure itself owns 3 brands, that's Butlins Holiday Resorts. We have 13 Warner Leisure hotels and 36 Haven Caravan Parks. So we operate across 53 sites. We have around 11,000 employees. Historically, our brands each operated independently across procurement and AP. Our sites were able to buy what they liked from who they liked. So they were buying the same product from different suppliers, paying different prices. We had no one purchasing system in place. We had paper requisitions that somebody would chase somebody to sign around a site and maybe somebody else to countersign, and those paper requisitions were often just managed on a spreadsheet. So you can imagine there was a long month-end process as well to manage all of that. So we just didn't have one source of purchasing management information at all across the business. So I suppose the key drivers for us were to gain control and to obtain that purchasing management information and to align the processes and bring about efficiencies across the 3 brands, really.
Okay. And very briefly, why did you choose Coupa Software, and also why Xoomworks as the implementation partner?
We looked at a lot of different systems, but because of our user base, we chose Coupa because it was easy to use and for the speed of implementation. And the project manager that we brought in had worked with Xoomworks before, and they had a very good reputation.
Thank you. So, in your view, what were the big challenges? What did you have to overcome in the project?
So for us, I've worked on other projects before where across the 3 businesses, but the hardest thing for us really was to define a process that would work across the 3 brands, because we wanted an aligned process. We had over sort of 2,000 people potentially that were going to be buying, that we had to reach out to. There was entrepreneurial sites. The general managers of those resorts and those hotels had been allowed to do whatever they wanted historically, so that was a challenge. And because we hadn't had the purchasing system, we didn't have a commodity structure in place. It was something that was completely new to us, but we knew that we had to build something that would manage, theatrical costumes to food and beverage products, and we had to start with a blank sheet of paper. So we went out to the operators across the business, and they helped us to put that commodity structure together, really.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was it.
In terms of the approach, how did you sort of break up that challenge in terms of different groups of stakeholders, people that you had to get across?
We wanted to deliver that message effectively. It's always hard, I don't know whether you know that, but it's always hard to communicate effectively across such a wide range of people. So we broke that down into 3 groups of stakeholders, really. So we had our board, the users and the suppliers. So we started off with the board. We had buy-in from them from the outset, and that was really important to us, that we had their confidence in the project. So we went out to every one of our sites and we demoed Coupa to all of our users. We spoke to them about what we were doing. We were very honest in our approach. We answered every question that they came up with, and they knew that we had the board. This was being driven by the board. So at the end of those workshops, we collated all those questions and answers, and we fed those back to everybody that we'd visited. I think that built a lot of trust because we were completely honest about what we were doing and why. With regards to the suppliers, we used our in-house promotional teams to contact them upfront in advance of the project to talk to them about what we were doing, just to let them know the benefits to them and what was to come, really.
Okay. And in terms of the message itself, were there any particular areas of focus on the what you put out there to the business and your suppliers?
I think, well, for us, it was about keeping it simple. Probably a lot of scepticism out there. Our users are chefs and gardeners and facilities managers. They're not people that would traditionally have used a PC in their everyday life, and some of them didn't even have access to a PC. So we needed to sort of get across to them that we'd chosen Coupa because it would make it easy for them to buy what they needed every day. And we also had to think about the fact that we would be changing the role that we were asking them to do. So we had to talk about sort of getting senior management on board on the sites, because we needed them to support the teams on their parks, and also senior management in our central support office. I think, what was I going to say then?
Well, there were changes to, quite a lot of changes to people's roles. So I guess this was
that's
kind
what I was
of
talking about. Yeah, so
some negatives.
Yeah, there were some negatives, but we are a customer-facing business, so we wanted people to have more time to spend on customer-facing activities instead of spending time running around the site, a large site with a paper requisition in hand, really. Yeah, that's something to wanted to make.
Okay. And how about the suppliers? I think you had quite a sort of strong approach in terms of approaching suppliers, trying to get them on board for e-invoicing. If they aren't able to engage with us electronically through CXML, we were asking them to use the Coupa portal to process their invoices electronically. So we had to sell the benefits to them. So those were things like transparency of their orders. They could see their orders straight away. They were able to flip their own invoices. They were able to see the status of their invoices. When those invoices have been paid for, processed for payment, they were able to upload their catalogues electronically. It ties with them as in with us as a supplier. We're more likely to use them in the future if they're using the Coupa Supplier Network. And also, it's easy for them to use, and it's free for them to use. But yeah, we spent a lot of time and effort onboarding those suppliers onto the CSN. So a bit of a sales job, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about the different sets of stakeholders. So you've got the exec board in place to sort of have that kind of top-down approach in the project. Your users, the message was all about keeping it simple and what was in it for them. Yeah. And then the suppliers was about tying them in with the supplier for Bourne Leisure. How did you get that message across? Did you use specific resources, that external, internal? How did you go about that?
So one of the things I talked about was how hard, and it continues to be a challenge to communicate to such a wide group of people. So for us, we're lucky that we've got a studio team that produce all of our brochures. They manage our websites and put together all of our adverts. So we use them to produce really good training materials and comms, they all look very professional. That's something that we wanted to do from the outset. It was clear to us, because of our user base, that we would have to run end-user classroom-style training. And we used Xoomworks to help us with that. There was a lot to organise. There were a lot of sites to get out to. And we wanted to make it as easy as possible for people to adopt the system. So there was a lot of work involved in running that training. That went really well. We have set up a one-stop shop SharePoint, which we host all our training materials on. We've recorded videos, webinars. We send out fortnightly newsletters to all of our users, so with sort of 5 top tips on there. So we continue to engage with them and keep them motivated and doing the right thing. And when we learn more about the system, we share that knowledge with them. I suppose with the suppliers, again, we talked about getting those suppliers onto the Coupa Supply network. So how can we make it as easy as possible? So we have, again, training materials that we've refined as we've gone along, made those simpler. We host sort of 6 simple videos on an external web portal that the suppliers are able to access that shows them how to use the supplier network. I mean, to be honest, once they're registered and they've processed their first invoice, it's easy. It's just getting them to do it, really, that initial focus. But again, we have a dedicated phone line, dedicated email, and we've also upskilled our AP team to understand how the Coupa Supply network works so that they are able to support suppliers to get them registered, get them processing those invoices. So we've also provided those training materials and run through all of that with our AP team. So they're subject matter experts as well, and they're in turn supporting suppliers.
I think the difference with Bourne was that if you look at your user base, it's people like you mentioned, it's kind of cooks and gardeners and entertainers on site. So they're not people who are always sat at a PC. It's not like a services type organisation. So
some people had never actually used it. It was a bit of a culture shock, really. So some of them hadn't even used the machine. So you had one lady sat in a training session, and we told her, press the enter key, and she didn't know where the enter key was. So we just, we did have down to that level that we had to get people to understand the purchase to pay process and to use the system, really. So, yeah.
So it was a bit more of an investment in time than you would usually expect.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe let's talk about, what were the successes? What did you achieve in the programme?
So we do have 100% user adoption. You don't get access to the system unless you've taken part in new user training. So our new user training is very much exercise-based because it's easy to understand the functionality, and then it's just focused on exception handling. So that's worked really well. We are very proud of the fact that we have around 90% of our invoices are processed electronically, and that's not something that we'd ever anticipated would happen. But now it's like a challenge to reach 100%. But that's something that's worked very well. We've got 90% electronic invoicing, most of that through the Coupa Supply network. So that enables us to pay suppliers on time, and in turn a lot more often than we did before. So we are now starting to focus on early settlement discount, and that's something that we hadn't considered.
Yeah, I think it wasn't really in the business case when you started the project, early payment discounts, but actually it's a huge source of savings for you on a monthly basis. Yeah,
being totally honest, we hadn't even considered additional early settlement discounts. So Coupa the system allows us to focus on early settlement discount, sending the right message to the users about receipting in a timely manner, because at the end of the day, that early settlement discount is in their hands, but it also allows you to identify where you could have made potential savings, where you can, who isn't receipting in a timely manner. So it just helps you to focus on which suppliers are on the early settlement discount, send those messages to the users. You will benefit from processing your transactions in a timely manner. So yeah, absolutely, it's something that we hadn't even considered.
And the software actually sort of proactively suggests when you can make an early payment discount?
Yeah, I mean, our IP manager, she reports on all of the early settlement discounts. So where we've made savings, opportunities that are lost, because the steering committee are very much focused on how can we grow that early settlement discount program. So the purchasing team are able to focus on and target suppliers now. So we're actually writing and communicating with our suppliers to try and encourage them to offer us early settlement discount, which is something that we've never done before, really.
Okay. And we talked about paying on time. Obviously, that's a pretty crucial thing. But what are the benefits that you get out of paying your suppliers on time?
So certainly, the feedback we get from them, I mean, we should be paying them on time anyway, but the feedback we get from them is that they are happier to deal with us because we are more likely to pay them on time. It makes them sort of happier to work with us and more flexible in the future. Was that me? Can you still hear me? And because of the Coupa Supply Network, I don't know, I keep banging on about that, but actually it's because they're able now to monitor their own invoices, we don't see as many calls through to AP with suppliers chasing invoices because they've got that visibility. So again, there's all these benefits that we hadn't even considered, to be honest. And
we were just talking before actually about something that's quite, innovative, let's say, in terms of the use of Coupa out in the stores on site. Maybe tell us about that.
We, I don't know if you've ever been to Butlins before, but Butlins sites, we've got lots of retail outlets, supermarkets, shops, bars, we have warehouses. So one of the, we'll sell bread and milk, eggs, blow-up crocodiles, sparkly wigs, we sell a huge range of products. So we do have large warehouses, large storerooms, supermarkets, shops. So one of the pieces of functionality that the users really liked is there's an order lists functionality. So that allows them to create and customize their own order lists, and they can use those as pick lists, etc., to sort of manage their par levels. And they really like that functionality, so we've helped them to learn how to use that. So what we're trialling at the moment is a mobile tablet, so that they can access their order lists on a tablet, and they can then walk around the storeroom or walk around the supermarket and order and sort of replenish stock from a mobile device. So I suppose from where we were, it's a massive leap into the future, certainly for us, to be able to offer them that sort of flexibility and give them more time, really.
So a real sort of practical benefit of having mobility on the system. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what didn't go so well. What could you have done better? What were the lessons that were learnt in the programme?
Something that I talk about, I like talking about, because if somebody had if I'd been able to talk to somebody at the beginning of the process, it would have helped me a lot. But I suppose for us it was, our user base is not unique, but it was about how much we'd have to help users change their behaviour. So, as we said before, they did walk around with a paper requisition, and then perhaps they would take it into somebody in an office when they'd eventually got somebody to sign it, and that person would then manage that requisition for them, manage the processing of the invoice, etc. So what we were trying to get them to understand, and we do more of this now, is their part in that purchase to pay process, what their responsibility is. The functionality is easy to use, but where do they sit in that chain? What are they responsible for? What do we expect of them? So we just need to help them more and focus on really exception handling. So, how can we prompt them to do that? How can we help them to understand what they need to do day to day, what they need to do every week? And the biggest change for us is the change in skill set for our AP team. So historically, our accounts payable team, most of those people have been with us for a long time, and they were used to chasing a paper invoice to get signed and get a nominal on it, or get it paid urgently, or process a statement reconciliation. And what they are expected to do now is to understand the system end to end. Their skill set's completely changed. We're asking them to support the suppliers on the Coupa Supply Network. We don't process as many paper invoices as we used to, so their job is to try and churn those electronic invoices where we haven't got clean invoicing, maybe with the supplier. So they're expected to understand the process end to end and support users to say, come on, you haven't receipted this. So it's been a huge learning curve for them, and we've had to spend time and effort getting them to understand that their role has changed. This is the way it is. This is a purchase to pay system now. This is not you just getting an invoice signed and processed on the system. So
it's really more value add activities, but that's kind of changed the way that they've had to.
It's all about that exception handling, actually. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Just before we finish, what's next? I guess that's not the end of the journey or the programme. Have you still got things to do?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of management information flowing through the system, which is what we wanted. So purchasing team are now focusing on, actually for us, the first focus is on facilities. So where we can make the biggest savings. Now we've got that in management information flowing through the system, which is what we'd always wanted. We have recently refined and simplified the commodity structure so that, again, from feedback from the users and the business, how can we simplify that commodity structure to make it easier to find what they need to post to and make sure that they post to that right commodity. My focus is, again, continues to be on user self-sufficiency. So how can we help people to be more confident in that exception handling process? What can we continue to do? We try and identify champions on the parks so that they're able to support their less confident colleagues around them. We're going to upgrade and take advantage of the new functionality that's coming hopefully in the next couple of months. And we continue to meet monthly with the steering group. They're very much still involved in that business as usual. How can we make things better? What's outside scope that we can put in scope just to help us manage the workflow, if nothing else. So yeah, there's lots of things to do still.
Okay, so I think we're all almost out of time, or are out of time. Are there any questions before we do a quick summary?
So we started with a pilot at Hemel, at our head office support, and then over a year we rolled out to the different parts of the business. So from April till November, really. Last year we spent onboarding EDI suppliers that were perhaps reluctant to move to CXML, but yeah. So we've been very nice about it, really. So again, the AP team helped us a lot, because historically people had access to key their own invoices on our accounting system. So they would ring if somebody was still not using a purchase. So if they got an invoice in with no PO, they would ring up that person, get them on the next training session, make sure that they were trained. And then we did report when we were meeting weekly. We did report on all of those users that were still continuing. So it became embarrassing if you were not using
name and
the new. But we did everything we could to help them to start to use Coupa, because it was a system wide, and again, there was no option really. But
I think a key difference was, so Bourne took the approach to say, well, whatever suppliers you used to use, however you used to buy, you can do that, but do it in Coupa. So they didn't rationalise the supply base before they went into Coupa. So it meant you had to onboard a lot more suppliers, but everyone used the system, so they had that visibility of what was being purchased. Actually, and now's the point where you start to refine.
We started off with 13,700 suppliers, 760 to be precise. We, as I say, we onboarded every supplier. Well, we contacted every supplier that we'd used in the last 12 months. Told them about what we were doing, sent out a questionnaire to them. Whenever a supplier returned the questionnaire, we did put them onto the system, but we still only have around 4,500 suppliers. So that's happened naturally. We did have the same supplier set up, so each brand has its own dream accounting database, so we did sort of have one supplier set up 3 different ways with different payment terms, being completely honest. So this has allowed us also to data cleanse, because I worked on a project previously. Part of that was to supply a data cleanse, and we just didn't have the opportunity to do it. So this has happened naturally, in that we've contacted them to get up-to-date data from them. But if they didn't respond to us with a questionnaire, we didn't set them up. So we didn't want much information from them. It's just sort of validating what we had. So again, that's something that's worked really well. We've actually streamlined our database, but people feel that they've still got those suppliers that they wanted. So one thing that we've made the mistake of doing in the past, so we talked about sort of site-based bespoke stock systems. So I used to work at Butlins at Skegness. So one of the things that we've done and got wrong in the past is we've sort of tailored. and then, you know, it becomes unworkable. So we wanted something that we could buy and we wouldn't be able to bespoke, if you like. But absolutely, some, you know, we talked about the business decisions and the business processes. So I think the only things that you have to consider are, what does your approval chain look like? Does it want to be management hierarchy? You know, how do you want to configure the system? Do you want to have invoice tolerances in there? What roles do you give your users? What do you allow them to see? What nominals do you restrict access to? So it's very simple, sort of straightforward thought process, but, you know, for us it was just about us aligning what that work process and what that workflow looked like. So
because it's a cloud system, you're kind of restricted in some regards. So you can't customize, you can configure, but you can't, you know, write code and customize the way the system looks. So it kind of, you know, keeps you on track.
I found that quite hard, really, because I used to be the system owner for our Dream accounting software and I had access to do anything. But actually, you know, in this way, you can set up custom roles if you want to sort of tailor what people have access to, but the core process is the same, really.
Any more questions?
So one thing that we don't do is, so if a price comes in and it's different to the catalogue price, so we have a pre-agreed price change process with the suppliers. Again, that's something that's completely new to us. So if a price comes in and it's different to the catalogue, that will go straight to the business owner. We do not pay anything or even send it back out to the user if the price is different to the catalogue price, because in theory that shouldn't happen. So we personally don't see any you know, any disputes with that.
But also the system supports that, so if a supplier makes a catalogue change, it has to go through workflow to be approved.
Yeah.
So they can't just up their prices without approval.
But yeah, you know, we're not seeing that many. We are, again, continuing to get as many catalogues as we can, because again, it still makes it easier for users to pick what they want from who we want them to buy from at that right price. So we haven't seen, touch wood, we haven't seen that many, you know, catalogue differences. I suppose for us, when it's food and beverage products and the price of onions changes, that can throw quite a few invoices out. So it's just about getting that turned around in a timely manner, really. So one thing that we found out the AP were doing when they were still continuing to check paper invoices against the invoice that the supplier processed on the Coupa Supply network, and they were there was been about 3 days a week on that. We didn't realise, but you can, you know, certainly the suppliers are able to attach a copy of their invoice to the invoice itself, so you can store documents on there, and you can either share those with the supplier or not. So it does allow you to store a copy of that invoice on there. Any paper invoices that we continue to process, we do still archive those, we do still scan them, and then there's still the visibility of that invoice. But if it's an electronic invoice, then, you know, we don't keep the hard copies.
Quickly then, a summary. I think what made the programme a success was really both choosing the software and that was simple, and keeping the project quite simple, so not over customising as we just talked about. Really focusing on people, so you invested a lot of time visiting
and continue
sites,
to do so as well. Yeah.
Training and so on. So it was a big investment. Addressing those negatives early on. So, you know, what's this going to do to my role, particularly in accounts payable with efficiencies. So you address that early on, and also flip that into a positivity. So, yes, accounts payable, you're not processing lots of paper, but actually you're doing more.
There's always something for you to do.
Always something to do. It's a more value-add role, which should give you better satisfaction. You had to sell the benefits in real terms out on the sites, so because they were very entrepreneurial, have their own P&Ls. How's this actually going to help us by delivering savings? And that was the messaging. And we really liked the fact that they used their in-house sort of promotional teams and comms teams to brand the project, which was a real success. So thank you, everyone. I'm sure if you have any further questions, you can find us over lunch
outside if you want.
or whenever you need. Thanks.